My name is Olivia Carter, and for most of my 34 years, I lived in the shadows of my own life. I was the woman who laughed at all the right moments but avoided the camera. The friend who gave great advice about self-love but secretly despised her own reflection. The daughter who carried the weight of expectations, along with the literal weight on her body. I was never just overweight. I was the funny, dependable, always up for a brunch Olivia, the one who planned everyone else's birthdays but skipped shopping trips because dressing rooms made her feel like a failure. I was 275 pounds and exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. I lived in Chicago, a city that pulsed with energy, but I walked through it feeling like a ghost. My job in marketing was fine, stable, predictable, and utterly uninspiring. I had friends, a supportive family, and a routine that felt safe. But deep down, I was miserable. Mornings were the worst. I'd wake up already tired, my body aching from carrying so much extra weight. The simplest tasks, bending down to tie my shoes, climbing a flight of stairs, squeezing into a crowded train, felt like small humiliations. Dressing for work was a game of camouflage, an attempt to hide the parts of myself I couldn't bear to see. Food had always been my comfort, my escape. It started in childhood, growing up in a home where love was shown through second helpings. My mother, a warm and generous woman, had battled her own issues with food. We bonded over late-night snacks, baking marathons, and just one more bite. Food was celebration, food was relief. And as I grew older, food became the thing I turned to when life felt overwhelming. I told myself I was okay. I was body positive, right? That's what the world encouraged, self-acceptance. But deep down, I knew that wasn't what I was doing. I wasn't accepting myself, I was numbing myself. I wasn't embracing my body, I was hiding from it. Dating? That was a joke. I had mastered the art of self-deprecating humor before anyone else could make a comment about my weight. I kept things lighthearted, but I knew the truth. I didn't put myself out there because I didn't feel worthy of love. Doctors warned me. My blood pressure was creeping up. My knees ached constantly. My energy levels were non-existent. But I tuned it out. Change felt impossible. Then came the moment that cracked everything open. It was a freezing January morning in 2021. The kind of Chicago winter that makes your bones ache. I was rushing to catch the train to work, bundled in layers, gripping my oversized coffee for warmth. The station stairs loomed ahead, just 20 or so steps. I started climbing, but by the 10th step, I was gasping. My chest felt tight. My legs burned. Halfway up, I stopped. People swarmed past me, their eyes full of impatience, and I felt a deep, searing shame. A woman in her 60s breezed past me like it was nothing. A teenager darted up 2 steps at a time, headphones in, oblivious to the way my body was betraying me. I stood there, panting, heart hammering, and I knew. This wasn't just about weight. This wasn't about aesthetics or fitting into a certain size. This was my life slipping away from me. I was 34 years old, and I felt like I was 80. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at my reflection in the mirror. For the first time in years, I really looked. Not just at my body, but at my eyes, tired, hollow, lost. Something had to change. I had no idea where to start. The idea of dieting, exercising, becoming healthy felt like climbing Mount Everest in flip-flops. But as I sat there, a quiet thought whispered through the self-doubt. What if I just took one step? Just one. I had spent years believing I had to do everything perfectly or not at all. But what if I let go of that? What if, for the first time in my life, I just tried? I didn't know then that this moment would change everything. I only knew one thing. I was ready. I wish I could say that after that moment on the train station stairs, everything changed overnight. That I woke up the next day filled with motivation, ready to conquer my demons. But real life doesn't work that way. The truth? The next morning, I still hit snooze 3 times. I still reached for my usual sugary coffee and bagel. I still avoided my reflection. But something was different. That moment on the stairs clung to me. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was fear. A deep, gnawing fear that if I didn't change, my life would shrink even more than it already had. I wasn't ready to overhaul my entire existence. But I could take one step. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I walked into a gym. It was a tiny place, just a few blocks from my apartment. Nothing fancy, dim lighting, old machines, the faint smell of sweat lingering in the air. I stood at the entrance, feeling like an imposter, my oversized hoodie swallowing my body. I was terrified. Terrified that people would stare. That I'd make a fool of myself. That I'd confirm my worst fear, that I was too far gone. But then, a voice cut through my panic. First time here? I turned to see a woman about my age, fit but not intimidating, adjusting the weights on a nearby machine. Her tone was casual, friendly, like this was the most normal thing in the world. I nodded, my throat dry. Yeah. Kind of obvious, huh? She smiled. Everyone starts somewhere. Then she gestured toward the treadmills. Start small. 5 minutes. Just walk. 5 minutes. I could do 5 minutes. I stepped onto the treadmill, heart pounding, not from exertion, but from sheer nerves. I hit the button. The belt started moving. 1 step. Another. 5 minutes turned into 10. My breath was uneven, my legs ached, but I wasn't dying. When I stepped off, something flickered inside me, not pride, not yet, but maybe hope. I came back the next day. And the day after that. At first, it was just walking. Then, a slow jog. I didn't tell anyone. This was mine. No grand declarations, no social media posts. Just me, showing up, proving to myself that I could. The hardest part wasn't the workouts. It was undoing years of self-sabotage. The voice in my head still whispered, "You'll fail. You always do." But another voice, softer, more stubborn, answered back, "Not this time." The first setback a month in, I was starting to feel good. Lighter, not in weight yet, but in spirit. Then, my first real challenge hit. One night, after work, I found myself standing in front of my fridge, exhausted. I'd had a terrible day, a project had fallen apart, my boss had snapped at me, and all I wanted was comfort. Comfort, in the form of takeout. Pizza, pasta, maybe some ice cream, something to drown out the day. For years, this was my pattern. Food wasn't fuel, it was escape. I stood there, my hand hovering over my phone, ready to place an order. Then, I remembered the stairs. The way my chest had burned. The way I had felt like my body was caving in on itself. I closed my eyes. Took a breath. 1 step. Just one. Instead of ordering, I grabbed my sneakers and went for a walk. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't run a marathon. But when I got home, the craving had passed. That night, I realized something, I was stronger than I thought. The weight started coming off, but that wasn't the biggest change. By month 3, I had lost 15 pounds. My clothes fit a little looser. My face looked different in the mirror. But the real shift. I started believing in myself. I signed up for a 5K, something I never would have dared before. The old me would have said, "That's for other people, not you." But why not me? Training for that race was brutal. The first time I ran for 2 minutes straight, I thought I might pass out. But every time I wanted to quit, I thought about that woman in the gym, the one who had told me, everyone starts somewhere. So, I kept going. Then came race day. I stood at the starting line, surrounded by strangers, my heart pounding. What if I don't finish? What if I'm the last one? Then the gun went off. I ran. Not fast. Not gracefully. But I ran. When I crossed that finish line, gasping, sweat dripping down my back, something inside me cracked open. For the first time in my life, I felt unstoppable. Facing my biggest fear by month 6, I had lost 40 pounds. My energy was through the roof. I had started lifting weights, something I never imagined doing. But there was still one part of my life I had been avoiding. Dating. I hadn't been on a real date in years. Not because no one asked, but because I never let them. I had told myself for so long that I wasn't worthy of love. That until I was perfect, I didn't deserve it. But wasn't that just another way I was holding myself back? One night, my best friend Claire grabbed my phone, opened a dating app, and said, "You're doing this." I protested. She ignored me. And just like that, I had a profile. The first guy I talked to. Nice, funny, cute. He asked me out. And I almost said no. Not because I didn't want to go, but because I was still scared. But fear had ruled me long enough. So, I said yes. The date wasn't perfect. I spilled my drink. I got nervous. But for the first time in years, I wasn't hiding. And that? That was everything. The breaking point, and the breakthrough at month 9, I hit a plateau. The weight stopped coming off. I was working harder than ever, but the scale didn't budge. Frustration set in. Was this it? Had I come as far as I could? Then, I remembered something important. This wasn't just about weight. It was about the life I was building. I thought back to that woman on the stairs, the one who could barely climb without gasping for air. I wasn't her anymore. I had run a race. I had lifted weights. I had gone on a date. I had faced fears I never thought I could. And I wasn't done. I shifted my focus. Instead of obsessing over numbers, I focused on strength. On how I felt. And then, something incredible happened. One day, I walked up those same train station stairs. No stopping. No gasping. No shame. Just me. Strong. Capable. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own body. I felt alive. And I was just getting started. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be standing here, drenched in sweat, gripping a barbell above my head, feeling more powerful than I ever have in my life, I would have laughed in your face. But here I am. It's been 12 months since I took that first step, and my life is almost unrecognizable. I've lost 85 pounds, not just in weight, but in self-doubt, fear, and every excuse I used to hold myself back. But the weight loss? That's just the smallest part of what's changed. The mirror, revisited for years, I avoided mirrors like they were the enemy. I knew what they would show me, someone I didn't recognize, someone I didn't want to be. One morning, about a year into my journey, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. And I didn't look away. For the first time, I wasn't picking myself apart. I wasn't searching for flaws or pinching my stomach. I saw me. Strong legs that had carried me through miles of running. Arms that could lift weights I never thought possible. A face that no longer looked tired and defeated. I smiled. And I meant it. My family saw the change before I did. I knew I was transforming, but I didn't realize how much it was impacting the people around me until my mom pulled me aside one day. She had struggled with her own weight her entire life, just like I had. We had bonded over late-night snacks and starting over on Monday promises that never lasted. One night, as I was meal prepping in her kitchen, she sighed and said, "I've been watching you, Liv. And I think I'm ready to try too." I nearly dropped the container of grilled chicken in my hands. She started small, just like I did, short walks, healthier choices, more water. But the biggest change? She stopped talking about someday and started believing in today. And when I saw her climb the stairs at the train station without stopping for the first time, I almost cried. The fear that never fully goes away. People think transformation is all about motivation, but that's not true. Fear still creeps in. What if I gain the weight back? What if I slip up? What if I go back to being invisible? The difference now? I know that fear doesn't get to drive anymore. I've had bad days. Days where I've missed workouts. Days where I've reached for comfort food. But now, instead of spiraling, I remember, one step. Just one. So, I take it. The woman in the coffee shop a few weeks ago. I was sitting in a cafe when a woman, mid-30s, wearing an oversized sweater that swallowed her frame, kept glancing at me. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, "I hope this isn't weird, but I've been watching you. You look so confident. Were you always like this?" I almost laughed. Me? Confident? But then I saw the look in her eyes. The same look I used to have, lost, unsure, scared to hope. So I told her the truth. No. I wasn't always like this. But I decided I wanted to be. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know where to start. I smiled. One step. Just one. This is only the beginning. I used to think transformation had an endpoint, some magical moment where I'd finally arrive. But now I know the truth. There is no finish line. There is only the next step. The next challenge. The next moment where I choose myself again and again. So, if you're reading this, if you've ever felt trapped in your own life, if you've ever told yourself change is impossible, listen to me. I was you. And if I can do this, so can you. One step. Just one. Are you ready?